We are going to the moon, and this time, the mission isn't about just planting a flag and leaving footprints, it's about staying. That's the vision shared by the US government, NASA, and a growing network of international and commercial partners. If the plan holds, humanity won't just be returning to the lunar surface. We'll be laying the foundation for something that's never been attempted before, building a permanent settlement on another world. A small city on the moon. And while no one can predict every challenge, there are already bold ideas and practical innovations taking shape that might make this vision possible. First, location. The moon may look uniform from Earth, but it's a diverse world with mountains, valleys, ancient lava plains, and craters carved by billions of years of impacts. During the Apollo era, all human landings happened in the relatively flat equatorial regions, chosen for safety and direct radio communication with Earth. But this time, NASA is targeting somewhere far more ambitious, the lunar South Pole. Why there? The South Pole is a place of extremes. Many crater floors are locked in permanent shadow, places where sunlight has not touched for millions, perhaps billions, of years. These eternally dark valleys are believed to hide vast reserves of water ice, delivered by comets and asteroids over eons. That ice could be life-saving, providing drinking water, breathable oxygen, and even rocket fuel if split into hydrogen and oxygen. NASA has pinpointed 13 potential landing sites for the Artemis program, perched on narrow ridges and crater rims that catch fleeting sunlight while overlooking deep shadowy basins. It's a location rich in scientific opportunity, but also fraught with danger. Rugged terrain, plunging darkness, and extreme cold will test every piece of equipment and every astronaut who dares to venture there. To survive, infrastructure is essential. Just as cities on Earth rely on roads, power grids, and shelter, so too will a lunar settlement. Only here, those basics must be recreated in one of the most hostile environments imaginable. Let's start with something deceptively simple: roads. The moon's surface is blanketed in regolith, a thin, powdery layer of ultrafine dust. But this isn't like Earth's sand. Each grain is jagged, abrasive, and clinging to spacesuits and scratching helmet visors during Apollo. The dust fouled equipment, clogged radiators, and even wore through protective fabric. Worse, without air to slow it down, dust kicked up by landers and rovers can travel long distances. When Apollo 12 touched down 180 meters from the Surveyor 3 probe, astronauts found it had been sandblasted by debris thrown up by the lunar module's engines. If people are going to live and work there long-term, dust must be tamed. That means paving landing pads, roads, and stable work surfaces. The US military has a temporary solution known as rhino snot, a spray-on polymer used in Afghanistan to solidify loose sand for helicopter landings. It could work on the moon, but shipping tons of material from Earth is unsustainable, and the last thing anyone wants is polluting the lunar environment with microplastics. A better idea is to use the moon itself as building material. The European Space Agency has been experimenting with turning simulated lunar dust into glass by blasting it with high-powered lasers, creating solid surfaces. The concept isn't new. People once dreamed of melting Earth's desert sands into glass highways back in the 1930s, but on the moon, it makes sense. Glass is just melted sand, after all. Instead of lasers, engineers could harness the sun. A giant Fresnel lens, a flat plastic sheet carved with concentric grooves, can concentrate sunlight into a powerful beam, hot enough to fuse regolith into glass tiles. The lens wouldn't need to be massive, maybe just 2.5 meters across. In theory, this could slowly pave landing pads and roads directly from lunar dust. The process is slow. Current experiments suggest that making a 100 square meter pad just 2 centimeters thick could take over 100 days, but the payoff would be a permanent solution that scales. With safe surfaces prepared, astronauts will need a way to travel. The Japanese Space Agency, working with Toyota, is building the Lunar Cruiser, a pressurized rover that's essentially an RV for the moon. Unlike the open buggies of Apollo, this vehicle would allow astronauts to move from habitat to rover without donning a spacesuit each time. Designed for long-range trips, it could support 2 astronauts for 30 days, powered by hydrogen fuel cells. It's mobility, shelter, and exploration rolled into one. But rovers are just the commute. Where will astronauts actually live? NASA has designed the first lunar house, the Foundation Surface Habitat. This 3-story hybrid of rigid structure and inflatable module will house 4 astronauts for up to a month. The ground level is a rigid metal core, 4 meters across, containing the airlock, EVA suits, and a geological lab for studying lunar samples. A ladder leads to the second level, an inflatable space expanding to 6.5 meters in diameter, with exercise equipment, a biology lab, and hygiene facilities. The top floor is home, bunks, kitchen, medical station, and human research lab to study how lunar living impacts the body. 2 astronauts might stay inside at a time while the others explore in the lunar cruiser, creating a rotation that balances science with survival. That's the beginning. But the long-term plan calls for permanent structures robust enough to withstand cosmic radiation, micrometeorite strikes, and brutal temperature swings between lunar day and night. The solution is as old as civilization itself: bricks. Lunar dust could be baked into solid bricks, encasing inflatable modules or metal structures within protective shells. This approach combines modern engineering with ancient building logic, layering up insulation and armor from local material. China is already testing moon bricks, experimenting with 5 simulated regolith recipes and 3 heating methods. Their moonpot vessel concept imagines robots stacking these bricks into egg-shaped structures, a blend of traditional architecture and 3D printing. To test durability, Chinese scientists mounted their prototype bricks outside the Tiangong space station, exposing them to 3 years of cosmic rays, vacuum, and extreme temperature swings. There are even more radical concepts. One U.S. project, funded by NASA's Institute for Advanced Concepts, imagines glass-blown lunar habitats. Using heat to liquefy regolith, compressed gas could inflate it like molten glass, forming hollow spheres. With little gravity and no atmosphere, these shells could grow huge without collapsing. Multiple layers of glass could form insulating walls, like double-pane windows. It sounds like science fiction, but prototypes are under study. All of this construction, of course, requires power. Solar panels can work, but the moon's long 14-day nights make them unreliable. In the South Pole, permanent shadows further complicate things. The solution? Nuclear power. China already powers its Farside lunar rover with a small nuclear unit, and NASA's Mars rovers run on nuclear energy too. But these are tiny, producing mere watts. A lunar base needs kilowatts, maybe megawatts. NASA's Fission Surface Power Project is working on compact reactors that use uranium fuel and Brayton converters to turn heat directly into electricity. Designed to weigh under 6 tons, about the size of a car, these microreactors could generate 50 to 100 kilowatts each. Rolls-Royce, leveraging decades of submarine reactor expertise, is one of the companies building prototypes. Just one reactor could power a habitat, a cluster could sustain a city. Imagine reactors nestled in dark craters where they'll never overheat, rovers cruising between domes of regolith brick habitats, astronauts farming hydroponic gardens inside inflatable labs, and landing pads paved with glassy tile shimmering in the lunar sun. That's the vision, humanity's first outpost beyond Earth. Not just a base, but a gateway. A chance to learn how to build and thrive off-world, opening the door to Mars and beyond. This is how we begin turning the moon into more than a destination. We turn it into a home. Bam sat veo noi dung de vo 3 tau video. If the foundation habitat and a few experimental brick shells represent the first step, the next stage is about scaling. A lunar outpost must grow beyond 4 people and a handful of modules if it is to truly become a city. Expansion isn't just about more living space, it's about replicating the systems that keep us alive on Earth: food, water, energy, industry, and community. And every piece of that puzzle has to be reinvented for the moon. One of the most urgent challenges is air and water. While the lunar South Pole promises deposits of frozen water hidden in shadowed craters, actually extracting and processing it is no small task. The ice is likely mixed with regolith, frozen solid at temperatures below -200 degrees Celsius. To access it, NASA and its partners envision robotic miners equipped with drills and heaters. The extracted material would then be processed in volatile extraction plants that separate water from rock and trap useful gases. From there, electrolysis could split water into oxygen for breathing and hydrogen for fuel. If successful, this transforms the moon into a self-sustaining ecosystem, no longer fully dependent on costly supply runs from Earth. But even if water extraction works, it won't provide food. And no one can survive long-term on freeze-dried rations. The answer is agriculture. Plants are natural recyclers, turning carbon dioxide into oxygen while producing food. NASA has already experimented with growing crops aboard the International Space Station, proving that lettuce, radishes, and even chili peppers can thrive in microgravity with controlled light and nutrient systems. On the Moon, the concept scales up into lunar greenhouses. These would be inflatable domes lined with reflective foil, packed with LED grow lights, and powered by the nuclear reactors humming nearby. Hydroponics and aeroponics, growing plants without soil, using nutrient solutions and mist, would bypass the toxic lunar regolith. Picture rows of leafy greens swaying gently under artificial sunlight, while astronauts harvest fresh produce just meters away from desolate gray craters. As farms grow, waste recycling becomes critical. Human waste, plant residue, and even exhaled breath can all feed into a closed-loop system. The European Space Agency's Melissa project has been studying exactly that, creating a miniature biosphere where every output becomes an input. On Earth, it's just a laboratory curiosity. On the Moon, it could be the difference between survival and collapse. Energy is another piece of the equation. While fission reactors can provide steady baseload power, redundancy is vital. Engineers are exploring the concept of solar power towers built along crater rims at the South Pole. Some ridges enjoy near-constant sunlight, over 80% of the lunar year. Cover them with solar panels and you could beam energy to habitats in the valleys below using microwaves or lasers. Combining nuclear and solar creates resilience. If one system falters, the other keeps the lights on. All of this adds up to a functioning outpost, but it's still not a city. To get there, we need to think about manufacturing. Building everything on Earth and shipping it across the 384,000 kilometers to the Moon is impossibly expensive. Even SpaceX's Starship, with its massive capacity, can't make a true lunar settlement affordable if every brick, panel, and pipe comes from Florida or Texas. Instead, we need in-situ resource utilization, turning the Moon itself into a factory. The regolith is more than dust. It contains silicon, iron, aluminum, titanium, and trace metals. With the right processing, regolith can become glass, ceramics, metal alloys, even oxygen. NASA has already tested a process called molten regolith electrolysis, where lunar soil is superheated until it liquefies, then subjected to electric current. The result? Oxygen bubbles out, while useful metals remain. Imagine robotic smelters churning quietly in the shadows, spitting out titanium beams and aluminum panels, ready to be assembled into new structures. Once manufacturing begins, architecture can evolve. Inflatable modules wrapped in regolith bricks are just the beginning. 3D printing systems could extrude entire walls and domes layer by layer. Italian company WASP has already printed clay houses on Earth using giant robotic arms. On the Moon, similar machines could print habitats directly out of regolith paste hardened by microwaves or lasers. The advantage is scale. You could build structures larger than any rocket could carry, shaped for optimal radiation shielding and thermal stability. Protection remains the key theme. The lunar surface is exposed to cosmic radiation and solar storms, far beyond what the thin walls of the ISS endure. Without shielding, astronauts would quickly accumulate dangerous doses. That's why many designs bury habitats beneath regolith mounds, like hobbit houses carved into the gray soil. Others imagine underground bases, hollowed out of lava tubes formed by ancient volcanic flows. These natural tunnels, some wide enough to fit skyscrapers, could provide ready-made shelter, shielding colonists from both radiation and micrometeorites. Exploring and colonizing lava tubes may become one of the most important engineering feats of the Artemis era. But what about mobility beyond the lunar cruiser? A city requires logistics. Cargo has to move. Engineers are toying with concepts of autonomous robotic haulers, lunar bulldozers, and even maglev rail lines laid across fused glass tracks. One particularly intriguing idea is the lunar elevator, not a true space elevator, but a tether stretching from the Moon's surface to lunar orbit. Payloads could be carried up the tether and released, dramatically reducing the fuel needed for launches back to Earth or outward to Mars. The city will also need communications. Unlike Apollo, where direct radio contact was straightforward, future lunar bases will need high-bandwidth data for telemedicine, remote operations, and live streaming to billions back on Earth. NASA's Lunar Communications Relay Network envisions constellations of satellites orbiting the Moon, bouncing signals around its rugged terrain. This would allow astronauts deep in South Pole craters to stay in touch, while Earth-based scientists remotely operate rovers and mining bots. As all these pieces come together, culture will emerge. Where astronauts once lived like campers, lunar settlers may start to think of themselves as citizens. Psychology is no less important than engineering. Long stays in cramped habitats demand entertainment, recreation, and privacy. Virtual reality systems could let colonists visit earthly landscapes after work shifts. Shared common spaces, cafeterias, gyms, meditation rooms, will help foster community. Even art and music may find their place. One day, the first lunar concert could echo inside a 3D printed dome. And then comes governance. Who owns the moon? The Outer Space Treaty of 1967 prohibits nations from claiming celestial bodies, but it says little about private industry or permanent settlement. NASA's Artemis Accords, signed by over 24 countries, attempt to lay out rules for responsible exploration, resource sharing, and safety zones. But as mining and manufacturing expand, legal and political disputes seem inevitable. Building a lunar city is not just an engineering challenge, it's a test of international cooperation. Intriguingly, private companies may play as large a role as governments. Spacex, Blue Origin, and others are positioning themselves as transport providers, hauling cargo and people. Construction firms on Earth are pitching lunar 3D printers, regolith processing plants, and inflatable modules. Even luxury brands have floated ideas of sponsoring interiors, imagining their logos glowing in low lunar gravity. The line between national prestige project and commercial frontier is blurring, just as it did with airlines a century ago. And all of this is only the beginning. The moon is not the destination, it is the gateway. By proving that we can build and thrive on the lunar surface, humanity will gain the blueprint for Mars and beyond. Every lunar greenhouse is a prototype for Martian farms. Every regolith brick is practice for shaping the sands of other worlds. The moon is where we learn to become a multi-planet species. The dream of a lunar city isn't just science fiction anymore. It's a roadmap being written in labs, design studios, and government offices right now. Within the next 2 decades, we may see the first generation of people not just visiting the moon, but living there. They will wake up to a black sky and an Earth hanging above the horizon. They will work, eat, laugh, and dream under domes built from lunar soil. And for the rest of us, watching from Earth, it will be the clearest sign yet that the human story has expanded beyond our home planet. This is the second chapter of the lunar city vision. The foundation is laid. The habitats are growing. The systems are taking shape. And soon, the moon will transform from a barren rock into a world we call home. If part 1 was about laying the groundwork and part 2 was about scaling up, then part 3 is about permanence, turning a fragile outpost into a thriving city. The ultimate goal isn't just to survive on the moon. It's to live, to prosper, and to use the moon as a springboard for humanity's leap into the wider solar system. Let's start with power. A city can't function without a stable energy grid, and on the moon, that means combining multiple systems into a resilient network. We've already explored compact fission reactors and solar farms along crater rims. But for a settlement of hundreds, maybe thousands of residents, NASA and its partners are considering more ambitious technologies. One concept is a modular nuclear microgrid, where several small reactors are linked together to share load and back each other up. Another is wireless power transmission, using lasers or microwaves to beam energy from solar arrays perched on peaks of eternal light down to habitats hidden in shadowed valleys. These technologies would give lunar citizens something we take for granted on Earth, the confidence that when they flip a switch, the lights will come on. Industry is the next frontier. In the early stages, manufacturing focuses on survival, oxygen, water, bricks, and glass tiles. But as techniques improve, lunar factories could begin producing metals, electronics, and eventually even spacecraft components. Imagine an assembly line on the moon churning out solar panels using silicon refined from regolith. Or robotic foundries forging titanium struts for giant radio telescopes placed on the lunar far side, where Earth's radio noise can't interfere. The moon could become not only a home but a workshop for projects that can't be built anywhere else. One of the most tantalizing industrial possibilities is fuel production. If hydrogen and oxygen can be extracted from lunar ice at scale, then the moon becomes a refueling station. Rockets launched from Earth could stop on the moon to top up before heading deeper into the solar system. Since the moon's gravity well is much shallower than Earth's, lifting off from its surface requires far less fuel. In practical terms, this could slash the cost of missions to Mars, Jupiter, and beyond. The moon would become a pit stop on the interplanetary highway. Transportation will also evolve. Rovers like the lunar cruiser will handle local trips, but larger cities may require entire networks of vehicles. Picture autonomous cargo convoys ferrying supplies between outposts, or maglev trains whisking people across glass-paved highways. Some visionaries even imagine a lunar skytram system, cables stretched across crater rims with gondolas carrying people and cargo. These concepts might sound far-fetched, but so did the idea of building skyscrapers on Earth a century ago. The far side of the moon also offers unique opportunities. Permanently shielded from Earth's radio chatter, it's the ideal place for massive radio telescopes. A lunar far-side observatory could detect faint signals from the early universe, peering back billions of years to when the first stars ignited. Combined with the James Webb Space Telescope orbiting far away, humanity would gain a new window into cosmic history, all thanks to lunar infrastructure. But while telescopes and factories make the moon scientifically and industrially valuable, the human element will define whether it feels like a city or just a base. Colonists will need culture, identity, and governance. How do you create laws on a world that belongs to no one? The Artemis Accords provide some guidelines, emphasizing cooperation, safety zones, and resource sharing. Yet as more nations and private companies arrive, conflicts are almost inevitable. Who gets access to a particularly rich ice deposit? What happens when one nation's nuclear reactor sits near another's habitat? Lunar governance will be a testbed for the kind of diplomacy required when humanity spreads across multiple planets. Community life will evolve in surprising ways. At first, every colonist will be a scientist, engineer, or astronaut, specialists trained for survival. But as settlements grow, so will diversity. Teachers, doctors, artists, and eventually even children may join the lunar population. Picture a classroom carved into a lava tube, where kids learn math under the glow of LED panels while outside, robotic miners hum through the regolith. Or imagine a theater dome where colonists gather to watch Earthrise projected on the ceiling, accompanied by live music echoing in low gravity. Over time, lunar residents may develop traditions, slang, even cuisine that are uniquely their own. Health will remain a constant concern. The moon's gravity is just 1/6 of Earth's. No one knows exactly how the human body will respond to living in partial gravity long term. Will bones weaken? Will muscles atrophy? Could children grow up healthy in this environment? To find out, astronauts will become subjects of ongoing medical research. Exercise routines will be rigorous, with treadmills, resistance machines, and even centrifuge habitats designed to simulate Earth gravity for a few hours each day. Medical stations will be stocked with advanced telemedicine links, robotic surgeons, and 3D printed pharmaceuticals. Eventually, as the settlement matures, it may attract visitors, tourists eager to experience low gravity and gaze at Earth hanging in the sky. Private companies are already sketching concepts for lunar hotels, domes with panoramic windows, luxury suites with Earth views, and excursion packages that include rover tours of ancient Apollo landing sites. Tourism won't be cheap, but it could become one of the moon's first profitable industries, helping fund further expansion. Looking ahead, the moon will not be the final stop. It will be the proving ground. Every challenge solved on the moon, dust control, radiation shielding, agriculture, manufacturing, translates directly into lessons for Mars. The red planet poses even greater challenges: a thin atmosphere, global dust storms, longer supply chains. But with the moon as a training ground just 3 days away, humanity will gain the confidence to go further. In this sense, the moon is not just a destination. It's a launch pad. Think of it this way: humanity has always expanded by building cities. From river valleys to coastlines, from plains to mountaintops, cities have been the engines of progress. The moon will be no different. What begins as a fragile outpost for a handful of astronauts could, within a century, grow into a bustling hub of hundreds or thousands. Its citizens will look up at the Earth not as distant exiles but as proud pioneers. And for those of us still on Earth, the sight of lights glowing faintly on the lunar surface will be a reminder that we are no longer confined to one world. So, how do you build a city on the moon? With ingenuity, with cooperation, with risk, and with persistence. Roads paved from dust, houses built from bricks of regolith, farms glowing with LED light, reactors humming in shadowed craters. It's not just possible, it's happening. The first lunar city will stand as both a triumph of technology and a declaration of intent: humanity is here to stay. From that moment on, The moon will no longer be just the silver lantern in our night sky. It will be a second home. And from its surface, we will take the next giant leap, outward, to Mars, and then to the stars.